Everybody. Okay, hello everybody. Our guest for tonight is Kevin and his wonderful wife, Karen. Kevin is a fascinating person, a dear friend, a veteran, a cancer survivor, mentor to the youth, role model, and none of that's possible without his better half, Karen. So before we get started, I'd like to just go with one question. Who is Kevin?
Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, Vin. Uh, I think I better start with a little bit of family history because it's kind of how does a Japanese Canadian end up in Souk, BC? And it starts with in the 1920s with my grandparents both, I guess, coming to work in from Japan into the Vancouver area. My dad's family were commercial fishermen, and my mother's father came with his wife to I think they wanted to be merchants, and along the way they wanted to make their fortune and eventually return back to Japan. But some there's a couple of wrenches thrown into that plan. The first one was a the depression of the 1930s, and so nobody was making money. It was tough to make a living, and so they were struggling, like most people worldwide were struggling at that time. And then just when they were out of the depression and things were getting better, the World War broke out. And though Canada was involved in September 10th of 1939, about a week after the Britain and France declared war on Germany, uh, Canada entered the fray, and things were looking good until December 7th of 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor. After the attack, the Japanese Canadian population was rounded up, and you were given a choice to be laborers into the rest of Canada. You had to get out of the West Coast, or you were moved to a camp in the interior of British Columbia. And so my mother's family went to a camp called Tashme in the interior BC, and my father's family were laborers on a sugar beet farm in the province of Manitoba. And then after the war, they weren't allowed to return back to the West Coast. They had to move to anywhere but or back to a bombed out Japan. And both grandmothers sat down with the grandfather. We're not going back to Japan. Japan is a bombed out country. It's a total shambles. Our kids don't speak proper Japanese, so they'll be outcasts because after decades of learning sort of a Japanese slang language, it was they would not fit into society there. So they stayed afterwards and eventually built up a family. And then when I came along in the early 1960s, um, we had been allowed to, instead of being on the outskirts of the capital of Manitoba, Winnipeg, we weren't allowed, Japanese Canadians weren't allowed to live in Winnipeg. We had to live on the outskirts, and only with the permission of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were Japanese Canadians allowed in the city for doing a job or doing business or buying groceries there. And it was until 1949 when they were allowed to move into the city as well as become doctors, lawyers, engineers. And I know that it was rough on our families to for all that stuff, but they adapted. They didn't adopt a victim mentality and brought us up, brought my sister and myself up to be uh, community-minded people. I credit my dad for that. He was always involved with the Japanese Canadian community as well as the Japanese Buddhist temple, as well as what was good was that though the Japanese population was spread out throughout Canada, there was no Japantown. Like the Chinese were all in Chinatown, but we managed to integrate ourselves into, we had no choice actually to integrate ourselves into the rest of uh, the population and made barriers for us a lot, where they were broken down a lot faster because, oh, Tom and Sue Yamamoto are moving into next door. Who the heck are they? And, oh, well, let's see. Tom is, he goes off to work, comes back. Uh, his kids are playing with my kids. They're going to my kids' school. Um, Tom always complains about taxes and shoveling snow, and he's just like us. And so very quickly, it's like, oh, we don't even notice the difference. And so, in some ways, the forced relocation of Japanese Canadians, I think, and this is my opinion only, that it benefited the Japanese Canadians to get into, I guess, North American society a lot faster. So I'm sort of I benefited from that without going through the hardships that my parents and grandparents went through. So I was able to go through, I finished my high school education in Winnipeg, went to the University of Manitoba, managed to study, become an engineer. And at the same time, I saw a way of getting a military service on my resume by volunteering for the Naval Reserve. So I would be shipped off to the summers to Esquimalt, British Columbia, the Navy base, and I would become what I jokingly call a navigator for the Canadian Navy on a ship, and it was very beneficial for me. Um, I also credit my success with the Navy because I joined at a very young age, at age 12, to become an air cadet. And though I got my glasses at age 12, my dreams of becoming a RCAF, Royal Canadian Air Force fighter pilot, was pretty dashed. But I managed to, instead of getting what I wanted, which was a flying scholarship, I managed to get into an outward bound mountain school scholarship. So at age 17, on Boxing Day, I was shipped out to the interior of BC at a place called Karamias, and was, for a young man, it was a turning point in my life. And that was because I was pretty introverted as a child and throughout high school. But then I went on this course, and it taught me, okay, I have to rappel down this cliff, which is something I'd never done before. Or there was a chasm in the mountain, and I had to reach out into the darkness, hold on to the other edge, turn myself around, and sort of Spider-Man my way down this crack in the mountain. And when you do stuff like that, climbing a frozen waterfall, and and you sort of get changed, saying, there's a lot more to me than I thought I had. So they made me believe in myself. And there was a key period in that time where they put you in the woods. They, gave you the instructions on how to build a shelter for yourself, but you had no food. You just had some matches to keep a little fire going so you could boil some water and make some tea. But there was no food. And for 3 days, all you had to do was sit in the bush and just think.
Wow.
And so you are in this situation. You say, well, who is Kevin Yamamoto was your question. That's what I was asking myself. And I kind of said, well, Kevin's pretty shy, but I know that if he wants to succeed in life, he's got to be a little bit more outgoing, a little bit more bold. And I said, but generally, I like to think the fairness that my dad taught me, to be fair to people, and to, if you see something wrong, do something about it to fix it. I kind of like that part. And so that is a key turning point, was that those 3 days. I said, I know who I am. I don't like how I am right now, but I see that I've got to change. And so when I got back to my Air Cadet Squadron and when I got back to my high school, they noticed a change. They said, yeah, he's more outgoing and he's going for things. He's not playing it safe all the time. I'll do a risk. And if he fails, if he falls flat on his face, he'll get up, dust himself off, and keep going.
Yeah.
So, so once I got through university and I finished my naval career, because I wasn't happy. I was thinking of the marine engineering experience, but then I noticed when I was talking and meeting these fellows and saying, "Well, what's your job like?" And then I noticed that a lot of them were on their second and third marriage, and on a military pension split 3 or 4 ways, it doesn't go very far. So it's a very expensive life, and it's hard to, if you're a single man for a long time, you can have a great career, but would you be happy? And that's when I said maybe I should try something else. And unfortunately, the price of oil had collapsed at the time of my graduation. So, of the 100 or so mechanical engineer graduates, only 5 of us had jobs, and I was one of them. And it wasn't because I was brilliant in school. I was extremely average, but I made an application, and fortunately, it just turned out that not too many guys apply for this job. And I got an interview, passed the interview, and in the summer, I think May of 1984, I started a career with a public service. And for 32 years, I I adapted to becoming a good contracting officer. So it got me. I had a fondness for military stuff, and so I had the military as my client, Army, Navy, and Air Force, and I enjoyed it very much. But there comes a time for an end. I retired in 20. I had Freedom 56, so I was 56 years old in 2016, and that's when I retired.
Oh,
And that was also the year that I got married to Karen, who also is a contracting officer in the federal government. And yes, that's how we met.
that's beautiful.
So you want to know who Kevin is? I think Kevin's he's been through a lot, but I dust myself off, stand up, and keep moving. And I appreciate good friends.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So, just hearing what you said about the labor camps and your parents and grandparents being put there, what was life like in a labor camp? Is it like a prisoner of war camp? Because they're not prisoners, they're looked
Well,
of a
it
different.
was like a prison then, at least the Tashmi one. Uh, if you go there, it's like communal living for families. It's like long barrack houses with maybe a blanket in between the family areas so that some families would have some privacy. But for, in the interior BC, they weren't used to the winters and
Yeah.
they didn't have the winter clothing required because they were all in the coastal area of Vancouver, and it was quite a shock for them. So yeah, I don't know. They had my father's family. I don't know where they were in Manitoba, but I do know that yes, my my grandfather was working on a sugar beet farm, and as the older brothers of my father would get old enough, they'd be helping out on the farm too, and it was a hard time. So they instilled in me, things are tough, but you got to keep working through it, and things will get better.
So here's the thought. I know you for a while, and I consider you one of my closest friends. I have never sensed any bitterness inside you about anything. Anything. As you're narrating, I'm thinking, how does a young person go through? I'm talking about your parents right now. How do they go through what they went through? It has to affect them, has to have affected them, the whole process. And how do they come out of that and raise you as a son with no concept of bitterness, but with strong values and strong communal sense? Like and that's something that blows my mind.
Well, my father had a fairness, and the Japanese Canadians were dealt unfairly, but they didn't. After they got out, they said, "All right, we have no choice. We got this is Canada. We've got to make it ours, and there are opportunities here. Let's take advantage of them as best we can." But both my parents never finished high school, but dad went through night school to become a bookkeeper and got a job there. And my mom, when my sister and I were old enough to go to school by ourselves, she got a part-time job. She started off as a key punch operator for a shipping company. Eventually got a job with the federal government of Canada and started running programs for pensioners to pay the pension checks would go out. The paychecks for the public servants would go out through her office. So it was a good time for her. She got a little bit more independent and with the second job, and we were doing okay financially. And my dad learned to invest, sort of like a young Vin. He
Yeah.
he got involved with investing and made sure that my sister and I, my mom, we were all taken well care of when he had passed. And so it was like, oh, we're okay.
Oh,
So no bitterness because they told us the stories. And as a young boy, I was really upset because my grandparents were cut the brunt of it. And I looked at them as a 16-year-old when they were in their 80s and saying, how were these people a threat? And but so as a young man, yes, there was some bitterness, but I said, look, we're doing okay now. I mean, I went to university. I I've I had a great career. There's nothing to be bitter about.
yeah, that's wonderful. You've done so well. Looking at the moments that would have made you who you were, I remember you sharing something about those 3 days in the wilderness that you spent. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, because it was in the middle of December, or no, early January in the mountains. It was lots of snow, lots of cold, and all you could do is, uh, sit around and think. Yeah, I mean, you could do walks and that, but you didn't want to lose track of where your shelter was. And at least once a day, one of the guys from the school would come up and make sure you're still breathing. Okay, see ya. Yeah, and
How old were you then?
17. So it was a perfect time for me. It was a transition saying, okay, I'm going to be going to university. And, so it was time to think about where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, you tried to stay warm, but the main thing that they wanted you to do was think about you or think about how you fit in but there's no, whatever you wanted to think about, you thought about. But I was thinking about me and saying, do I like myself? Uh, for the most part, yes, but there places to improve. Oh yeah, I knew about them too, and I said that's got to change.
Wow. So, what was the most powerful thing that you had to change? The biggest point that needed change?
I was extremely shy, so that even speaking in front of an audience was absolutely no go. And then I came back in high school, started making presentations, or I would write stories, and we in English we would allowed to be read our short stories, and uh, always interjected a bit of humor with it. So it was always a good laugh for my classmates, and with that type of approval, I became more outgoing.
Wow.
So, and then when it came to my career, if I wanted to get ahead and get promoted, I would have to take on bigger projects, and that would mean uh, we would be involved in things like a bidders conference where a requirement was coming out. It was a big requirement with millions of dollars at stake, and big companies would like to ask questions, and so we would have to have a theater, have all the potential bidders come in, and they would submit questions or ask me questions, and I would stand up in front of them and try and answer them.
Wow.
So when you go through that, and then you're presenting, if you're a team leader, and you say, "All right, we've got this requirement coming up. We need to look at which contract clauses. I need to look at a request for proposal form to go with the industry. Let's get an evaluation plan going. So when they come back with the bids, how are we going to evaluate them? What weighting are we going to put on finance versus the technical stuff like that?" And you needed to be a little bit more outspoken. If I was as shy as I was when I was 16, I couldn't have done that, and I wouldn't have been as successful as I wanted to be.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. So I'm sorry, I've just been bombarding you with questions one after the other. Uh,
That's okay. That's what this is for. You're going to find out more about me.
yeah, let's talk about the lady next to you.
Oh, wow. Karen. Well, we met through a mutual friend, and it was by accident. Karen was taking a project management course. And as for part of night school, I went through a project management diploma at the local community college. And I got a job in the government as a project scheduler. And she was taking a project scheduling course, the one I had taken several years before. And we knew nothing of each other. And so our friend, she said, "Oh, I know a guy." And it was Mazen Al Tuma was his name. He was a Iranian, no, an Iraqi. And he was on coffee break when Chris, our friend, brought Karen. "Oh, he's not there. Oh, Kevin's here. Let's." and, and that's how we met. I was, the second choice. And so I was seeing somebody else at the time, but when that relationship fizzled out, I gave Karen a call, and she was no, I don't want her. I'm not interested in a relationship. And if you do start something, I come as a package deal. I live, my mother. Oh, and I come with a dog. And I said, I should have listened more clearly. Yeah, but I pressed ahead. I said, that doesn't frighten me. It should have, but I said that. And so, yeah, we started a good long relationship. We've been married 9 years now. We got actually married in Souk before we even thought of living here. So,
Wow, that's beautiful.
yeah. So she's been, oh, and a key thing when we were still dating, and it was getting serious, I went for some blood work, and they said, "Kevin, you're anemic." And I'm thinking that's garbage, because eat red meat regularly. I'm pumping iron. I can't be anemic, and I'm a regular blood donor. But they said, "All right, let's try a few tests." And when they couldn't figure out why I was anemic, they went for uh, uh,
Marrow.
a bone marrow
See.
biopsy. So they went into my hip, pulled some muscle tissue as well as some bone out, and within a less than a week, it was like the doctor would like to see you, which is never a good thing. And they gave me this. You have this thing called Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia, and you said it's a um, rare, incurable, but treatable cancer. And most people like me would just say rare, incurable, and how long have I got to live is what I was thinking, but I didn't say that out loud because Karen was there. And then I've heard the last words were treatable. And I said, what the heck does that mean?
Hmm.
So not knowing that, I remember walking in a daze to pay for the parking at the hospital with Karen sniffling behind me. And we went home and I started looking things up. And the worst thing you could do is go to Wikipedia because, you say, oh, I've only got 5 years to live. Well, no, that was, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But you find out other websites and you do some research. But one of the things I said to Karen was, this, if you want out now, this is because we don't know where this is going to go. But she didn't take the easy way. She stuck with the idiot, and here we are.
Wow. Karen, can I ask you how that, I mean, this the same episode through your eyes and in your words,
Um,
just in a new relationship, and suddenly you get to know that the guy you're seeing has cancer? We'd love to know what your process was.
I think initially you go through shock, kind of disbelief, but never anywhere was there any inkling to leave. And I think if you look at it, it's something that's actually brought us stronger because it's no longer one, it's two facing it.
Yeah.
And I don't always see it as really negative. I think it's a bond because you're in it together. And I think you can't focus on the negative, but you have to look at other people and how they've coped and dealt with it and found strength through them and how they deal. And that moves you forward. And there's no other place I'd be.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Dan, did you find any changes in Kevin after the whole cancer treatment? Or has he been the same throughout?
Um, it's a tricky question because it was quite a while from when he was initially diagnosed until he required treatment because it's a type of cancer that's indolent, so it's very slow in progression. So until your body starts having symptoms, there isn't need for treatment.
It's one of those ones, hey, you've got a rare incurable cancer, but we're not going to treat you now.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so I had to wait about 4 years before I needed treatment.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't the typical symptom for the disease, which is why they said, okay, it was my albumin levels, which is egg white, and it was falling off a cliff. And they said, okay, clearly you're not malnourished, but yeah, we're going to do all these tests. And said, Kevin, at the end of the month with all these tests and the results, it's not anything else. It's got to be your Waldenstrom's. And I remember it was in the spring, and I said, okay, I said, in I would like to go, I wanted to start the treatment right away, which they were, I think, hoping for. They gave the decision to me to go ahead or not. But I said, I'd rather do it in the summer. I can go for treatment in shorts and a t-shirt rather than in wintertime with boots and a parka and gloves. in the freezing cold and then go for treatment and come into a frozen car and go home. It was, so I was lucky that way. And by the second treatment, I noticed an improvement. I didn't realize how tired I was until the second treatment said, oh, I have energy again.
Wow.
And I think you cope because you look at this may be what we have to cope with, but I don't think there's a person out there that doesn't cope with something.
That's true.
And it may not be cancer. It may not even be a health related issue, but there's everybody's got issues. You may not see them.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite heavy. But where does the cancer stand today with you? What's
I guess I would say we're in remission. And remission could last, like I took treatment in 2020. My blood work I take every 3 months, and it's extremely boring. And boring is good. So it's like, every 6 months, my doctor will say, all right, we'll chat over the phone. We'll do a video conference and said, well, how are you? And when they ask you how you're doing, they really want to know. It's not like a chit chat. It's more, how are you doing? Are you suffering anything? And it's usually, well, I've seen my results. I think I'm good. What do you think? Yeah, I think we're good. So sometimes our conferences, I wait longer to get to the online with them than the actual conference itself. Is like, oh, well, see you in 6 months. It's like, oh, you're good. Any questions? Yeah, none. Okay, see ya. So I like those. I know I used to think, oh man, it took me 25 minutes of waiting just for this 3-minute conversation. But all things considered, if that's the worst thing that happened in my day, it was a good day.
Yeah. That's really.
So right now things are good. And my support group in Ottawa, there was one woman who went 17 years between treatments. So it's so I'm hoping for a story like that.
Wow. That's something. Thank you. So let me ask you, who is Karen to you? I mean, what is Karen to you?
Oh, that's easy. Karen is my rock. I mean, when I gave her the chance to get out of this situation when I was in it, and she stuck by me, and ever since then, it's been. She thinks I don't need her as much as she needs me, but that's BS. uh, she keeps me sane. One of the things that I did mention about the family, the Yamamoto side of the family, we have this Yamamoto temper, which is infamous in the family history, saying, oh, we just go berserk. And I knew she'll see me get angry and frustrated, but I know if I went berserk like the Yamamoto temper was, where you're just irrational and destructive, she'd be out of here in a second. And I wouldn't blame her. So I know I gotta straighten up and fly right. I gotta be a better man. And that's why she's here. I know it's cheesy because I saw it in a movie. You make me want to be a better man. And that's what she is to me.
That's so beautiful. What's Kevin to you, Karen?
A pain in the ass.
No. I think he's always brought out the best in me. In the same way he may see me as his rock, he's that for me too. And I think that's it. And I think we're lucky in that I think we're best friends and we're very compatible to each other. And I think it's very true. We bring out the best in each other.
Wow, that's beautiful. When I look at both of you today, you've got your life sorted. Your health is good, financially rock solid, or should I say better than stable. Uh, you help community so much. Both of you are just community people. You want to help the community any way you can. You're really present and you've got a beautiful life. So what has been your journey to achieve this balance, to be able to be so optimized?
I don't know. That's a tough question, but I'll give it a shot. My dad was always part of the community, and I remember eulogizing and saying how much community meant to him, and I wanted to take that up. And so, when it comes to myself, when I joined the newcomers group and I met you and our mutual friend Les, and he was part of the men's support group in Souk. I said, well, let me see, because I had 2 years earlier, before I moved to Souk, had lost both my mother and sister 5 months apart, and then 6 months after um, I lost my mom, Karen lost her mom.
Oh,
And so I going through that and seeing it through Karen's eyes, I thought the men's support group, if somebody's dealing with grief and losing a parent, I can provide some help and I can provide some insight and have some logical stuff saying, okay, you don't have to handle, if you're the executor, you can get a lawyer to do the heavy lifting of getting the will probated and stuff like that. So getting involved in the men's support group was easy. I felt I had a lot to offer. And Karen was behind me on this 100%. Just get guys need help too, and then I got involved in trying to help the community first with a family game night, which wasn't successful. We tried promoting it, but I think when you're a teenager on a Thursday night, going back to school to play games, not a thing. But I got involved instead with the youth drop-in basketball, and that's been a lot of fun.
nice.
I see young men that say, "Yeah, they want to play basketball," but I can just see that some of them were struggling emotionally, and I said, I think I better talk to that guy. There was one guy who almost got into two fist fights his first night, and I wanted to talk to him. Went back the next week, and I haven't seen him since, and I sort of regret not reaching out sooner, because I wanted him to enjoy basketball. I wanted him to fit in with his schoolmate or people his close age who love basketball too,
Yeah.
and just go about life in a better way.
Wow. That's beautiful. That's very nice.
And of course, your philosophy society. I said to myself, I've got nothing in. I didn't study Plato, Socrates, any of this stuff. But next thing you know, I'm sitting in and I'm raising my hand, saying, "I want to speak because I want to say something pertaining to my experience with this concept that we're discussing." So, that, and suddenly it's become very important to me. So, thank you for that, Vin.
Pleasure. It's just as important to me too. It just opens your mind, opens everything. In fact, just opens possibilities. And you mentioned Les. Just like you, I think he's amazing. What a guy! Again, a veteran. Again, another brilliant guy. Just brilliant. So, if I am to ask you, talked about some of the tough times you've gone through. You've gone through cancer, you've gone through your whole, so many tough things as you've come to where you are. Would you like to share some of your happiest times?
Yes. I think there were a few things. Career-wise, there's always, successes and little setbacks, but, you know, I think when I finally made my last promotion, I knew I didn't want to go any higher. And that was a big relief to me saying, okay, I think I've got this all sorted out in my career. If I stay at this level, I'll still do exciting stuff. I'm still going to have fun. I'll still lead and mentor people so that they can take my job or a job similar to mine one day.
Yeah.
So I was happy with that, but certainly meeting Karen and the struggles that we went through to get married, but that was worth it. And going through my first treatment and getting to the end of that and having things stabilize, I'm very happy with that. Moving to Souk, to live in such a beautiful part of the country that you know, I actually look forward to winters because I know if we do get snow, I can handle it versus, oh, I need a snowplow service.
Right.
So, yeah, but nope, I'm living the good life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Learn
every
it.
day is a good day here.
Yeah.
Life is good.
You have, both of you have all this experience and wisdom, and you are sharing it. It's not like you just hold it to yourself either. So question I would have for both of you is, what is your message? What's the message you would like to put out, whether it's to the youth you're mentoring or to anyone, even just our audience, to me, to anybody?
Well, for the youth, I know there's a lot of pressures on, and certainly, um, the life can sometimes feel overwhelming, but you know, uh, youth suicide is always, I I heard a phrase. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and life is a test, and things always there's always going to be some roadblocks and some uh, regression or things that didn't go your way. But you have to build up a inner resilience and to persevere and say, okay, this time I fell flat on my face. I got to, get myself up. And then how can I succeed the next time? And if you fall back on your face again, get up. You got to build resilience. So for the youth, and as for those still, trying to get ahead, material things aren't the most important things. It's friendship and love and counting your blessings that you have good health. You may not have as much in the bank as you want, or your investments aren't doing well, but it's a temporary thing. You just got to keep going.
Wow. I heard you say resilience and gratitude and just keep going, like you said, determination. So, of all the qualities, there's many qualities required for one to be successful. If you had to pick one of those as the most important, non negotiable quality one needs to have to get to where you are, what would that one quality be that overshadows everything else?
Be a good friend,
Oh, wow.
because through friendship, you can meet people that'll help you with the other things, dealing with grief, finding a better solution so that you can get ahead financially or within your community, be, be more prominent.
That's amazing. Wow. Karen, your thoughts on this? The qualities required?
It's a tricky one. I think a method of is, I think, really looking at counting your blessings and looking at how lucky we are to have what we have. I think in terms of achieving, I think persistence is important, which is what he's been saying with, just keep trying, dust yourself off, keep going in it. And I also am a believer for helping people. It's really listening, because so many people don't have people that listen or that they can talk to. And friends and family are the most important.
That's beautiful.
I think that's it.
Yeah, no. Vin, you became a very good friend because you were able to tell me the truth, whether I wanted to hear it or not.
That's one.
I won't go into the story because, but since then I said, this is a good man and he's going to be a good friend because he won't let me take the easy way. He'll say, do it the right way.
Thank you. Yeah. So, going by everything you've said about yourself and your parents, I think the one quality that seems to come out across generations for you is the ability to adapt. Adapt to a new circumstance, adapt to a new health, adapt to a new reality. You seem to be brilliant at being able to adapt. That could be one of the biggest obstacles that many of us face in our daily evolution. I need to be able to get rid of this set of um, operating systems and adapt to a new environment, whether it's from being a student to a professional, or from being single to being married, or just a new, from being a veteran to becoming a civilian. All of this, I noticed that you are exceptional at adapting. So for anybody who currently wants to change or adapt or evolve and has difficulty doing that in whatever area, what are your thoughts? What allows you to be able to adapt so brilliantly? And what do you think is the biggest hurdle that people generally face while trying to adapt, within themselves or outside, both?
I think it's the ability to listen, especially when advice is being given, and the ability to ask the right question. I, like you and Kirsten and my wife, throughout our careers, we're looking to solve problems, right? You you listen and you go back on your experience and say, all right, Vin said, instead of looking at this financial picture, think about this one. Or Kirsten has her patients and they come to her with problems, and the two of them sit down and solve it. Karen and I were contracting officers. We said, okay, we need a service or we need this product, and we need a good price for the Canadian taxpayer, and we need to satisfy the client's requirements. And how do we do that? And how do we work with the contractor or the supplier and say, okay, we want this, we want it this done this way. Can you do it? Or how do we make this work? And so it's always, when you're working a contract or a patient or a financial file, you're looking for solutions. And sometimes you have to ask for help, saying, I remember working in a group of us, and I would say, "Hey, I've got a contract with so and we're with this problem. Has anyone come across a problem like that?" And you go and sit down and listen, and then say, "Okay, 90% I can use, 10% I've got to get imaginative and come around with a solution." And listening and saying, "Okay, thank you very much. Be grateful, but yeah, let's let's adapt to this problem."
Wow. You mentioned something about asking the right questions. So, what is a question I should be asking you? Or, Karen, what's a question I should be asking him?
That's a tough one.
It is.
Because there's so much to you, right? There's so much. And maybe I'm missing something huge.
Well, Kirsten, is there something you want to ask me that I I should answer? I'm stymied right now.
Well, I think kind of along that adaptability, something that I was just also kind of pulling out from the conversation, was this piece where you were able to shift, at different times in your life. You mentioned, when you were at Outward Bound that there was you noticed internally, this was actually just something that happened for you, right? That you noticed that being introverted wasn't moving you in the direction that you wanted. And so you made a change. You actually changed something internally and kind of a trait. And then mentioned in your marriage that there had been kind of this family history of kind of outbursts, right, and anger, and recognizing something needs to shift, and I'm going to change something internally. And I think that there's something so powerful about those statements that you've made and what came of that, right? That after learning some of those skills of extroversion, becoming, how far you were able to go in your field, and then in your marriage, making this change, and how attuned and aligned you are in such a beautiful marriage. And so I think of for people who are moving through that, and I think, when you like mentor youth, where there's going to be traits that they maybe feel they don't have, that is just not something, a natural part. How would you maybe encourage them, or what was it in you that was able to make that kind of a change?
Hmm.
I think for the for those, communication in marriage is a downfall for many relationships. And so sometimes seeking counsel, like even though we didn't need it, we would go to see a counselor so that we can improve our communication skills. And communicating is key. The key part for me is listening and keeping my mouth shut and make sure that I hear her. And then when she explains something or tells me something, I should, repeat it back to make sure. So, Karen, you think I did this because of this, and I'm thinking, no, I had something else in my mind, but I should, I will, and I wasn't listening to you fully, and so I can make the change. So, counseling for a couple, even if you think things are going well, sometimes if you say, let's just see a counselor for an hour. And if there's any issues, we can bring it up there and guide us through. Professionally, yeah, it's uh, consulting with your peers that have succeeded, or even those that you say, well, he could have gone higher, but he seems happy where he is. What's with that? Because I know I could have gone higher, but I didn't want to.
Hmm. I can relate to that. Yeah. I think it's one of the most powerful moments in a person's life when you can draw boundaries, even on yourself, and you can say, okay, this is enough for me. I'm good. Because there's always that urge to have a little more and a little more. So for you to be able to draw a line and say, okay, this is enough, is beautiful. I've in fact injured myself because I didn't know when I should stop. Even simple things like going for a workout, and you overdo it and you hurt yourself. So just the ability to know when enough is enough and to draw a line, that is super powerful. Yeah. That's beautiful.
If I may, I think when you look at adaptability or change sort of is presented on you. Sometimes you don't really plan for it, but the way to deal with it or to adapt to the change is having a good support system around you. And the support system is in many forms in terms of marriage or relationships, or even with that is strong friendships. Because it's the people that know you and love you the most that can guide you through your change. Because nobody's in isolation and does it alone.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how I see it too.
That's beautiful.
Really?
Oh, wow, that's some heavy stuff.
Good
Okay,
stuff.
so do you still have to overcome the issues that you did earlier, like being an introvert to being a much more open person? Do you still tend to relapse into being an introvert, or is that done once and for all?
I like to think it's done once and for all because, going to your philosophy salon and just, taking a contrarian view to things.
Yeah.
I know I'm going to be looked at, but it doesn't frighten me anymore. I said, look, I am who I am, and I I like to share my opinions, and you are fully within your right to disagree with any one of mine, but it's okay. We can still be friends.
Yeah. So do you have any role models?
Well, my father, and I liked, as a kid growing up in wartime BC, and then I remember him loving the baseball team, the Dodgers. And the reason he liked it was that they were the first ones to integrate baseball. And so the first black man that was in the major leagues was number 42, Jackie Robinson. And since then, he was a Dodger fan. And I know because he figures if a kid who just was in on a farm in Manitoba pulling sugar beets can, if a black kid can, get into the majors, I've got a shot. And that was my dad. And I liked the Jackie Robinson story. And I'm a Dodger fan too. So my dad was a big hero. And another one was there was a basketball coach that I was an assistant coach for a basketball team for minor 10 and 11-year-old boys in Ottawa. And the Canadian Olympic coach, Jack Donahue, had a camp for coaches, like a training session. So I attended that. And I found it very inspirational. He told a few stories which I used when I was coaching the kids. And a few weeks after the camp was done, there was a big exhibition tournament in at one of the universities. And as a coach, I said, well, I'm going to take my notepad and my pen and a little clipboard and just see, and so I'm sitting at the back. So I'm at the top of the rep and I've got the best seat. And along comes Jack Donahue and a friend. And they sit down right beside me. I didn't move to be with them. They just sat down beside me. And I was wearing a Brooklyn Dodgers cap. And he stands up and he said, I know you, sir. I don't know. And I told him, well, a couple of weeks ago I was at your camp and, the stories that you told. And I use them on my, oh, which ones did you tell the kids? Okay. And, it was like two guys, like I was an assistant coach for a boys team and he was the Canadian Olympic coach. But we were just two guys at the same level, just talking one-on-one about coaching. And I said, that's how I want to treat people through life. No matter how big I get, I can see a guy starting off and to say, look, I was in the same position as you. Let's talk. And what's bugging you now? And let's see if we can work something out. Because it taught me how to treat people. So those two guys.
That's beautiful. Wow. Wow. And okay, coming back to Karen and you, can you tell us the three most endearing qualities that Karen has that just make you adore her?
Patience, because look who she married. And a sense of humor, because look who she married. And kindness, because I always felt supported by her. No matter, the decisions I made, she would stand by me. And she always expressed kindness. So we always say, I love you a lot during the day. And at times,
I love him more.
I love her most. And she says impossible.
Can you,
But
one quality that you find most annoying about her?
One.
this, no, it's so minor. But, I always find myself, because I'm although she's Scottish, but background as a McFarlane, I thought, conserving energy would be a big thing for her. But I'm always finding, oh, she left the closet light on, or she left the milk on for, so that, but when you balance that minor quirk with everything that she's done for me, it's not even, like that. It's so minor. I can laugh about it because that's all. It is so trivial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same question for you, Karen. Three things you find fabulous about Kevin, and after that, the most annoying thing about him.
Um, Again, I think he's had incredible patience with me. There's no doubt in my mind that he loves me. I remember when we were first dating, my friend used an expression because she'd seen us together, and she said he adored me. She could see it.
I can see it too, even now.
Yeah. But and he is very kind as well. He's a good person to the core.
But can I see if I'm right about this guess?
What?
The thing that annoys her, stubbornness.
Ah. Do you agree?
He is actually more stubborn than me.
Is that the quality that annoys you most, or is there something else?
Wow.
There's so many.
I don't think we'd be here if he wasn't stubborn.
It's a good thing and a bad thing.
It's a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah. Sometimes you're independent.
Well, it comes with stubbornness. I'm going to do it my way, and
Exactly.
which is why I like when you go out rowing and I can do vacuuming unsupervised.
So beautiful. Okay, I've got a question for you, and I think this could be super important. Um, Kirsten also believes hugely in friendships and community. So do I. So does Karen. So do you. We all believe in community and friends, and being there for your friends, being a solid friend yourself. Super super duper important in life. Like you said, we don't live alone. We are part of a village. You need to be there, right? But I also find that friendships evolve, people change, people sometimes even change their direction. And if you don't pick your friends well, you could land up having somebody in your life that takes you all the way down. Like friends are human beings, so friends can also be jealous. Friends can also be insecure. They can be possessive. They can pull you in a direction which may not always be healthiest. So, most of what you've said about friendships is after you made somebody a friend, right? So, what is the screening process? Like you said, in me, you saw my honesty and my no filter. That I'm going to give you what I think, and it'll be uh, with good intent. It won't be malicious, right? It may be no filter. It may be, it may come like a brick, but it's honest and it comes from a good place. I see that as the filter you mentioned, or as like a criteria. So, what are the qualities you look for and you say, okay, this is a friend? How do you pick? Because you can't just pick somebody and say, that's my friend, and then the person pulls you all the way in some other direction.
Well, I think there's a commonality of shared values.
Okay.
Okay, you may be a, a liberal, and I may be the conservative, but we both want what's right and what's fair. You may have a different way of going about it, but as long as our values are the same, we can still be friends. Because, all right, I don't agree that your way of solving the homeless problem is going to be great, but you know, I hear you, and I may want a different approach, but we both want the same thing. And as long as we're both wanting the same thing, and it doesn't matter who's right or wrong in the end, let's still look at this problem. And even though we're going to debate it, it'll just strengthen our friendship, and just say, this is a guy that I want to stick with because his values are mine. We want to help the people.
Got it.
Want to get them off drugs. We want to get them into a home, and we want them to live a good life. How they get there, your approach and my approach be different, but should be. Your background, my background, we are completely different. I started off in the prairie town in Canada. You were in southern India.
Yeah. Thank you. And Karen, you feel the same while picking friends?
I think it's a little bit different. I remember an expression I heard years ago, and I really don't know where it came from, but it went along the lines is true friends are like diamonds, precious and rare. False friends are like autumn leaves found everywhere. Oh, I think it's a case of looking for people that are true. in their in life and with you specifically. So I think it's people can be completely different and be friends.
Yeah.
However, they have to be true.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. And I also had a friend when I was working, she said her expression in work was be friends with all, but trust very few.
That's true.
So it's I think it's the trueness and the friendship that will always come through. And I think people that are ones who would, as you were expressing, bring you down are not true friends.
Right.
That's my take.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a nuanced subject, but it's important. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. And here's a question for you, Kevin, for the youth and the others that you're mentoring. We live in a confusing and volatile environment today. Whether it's politics, one doesn't see the other side as rivals or competition. We often see the other side, the other political side, as just enemies. We are also living in a time when there's wars mushrooming all over the planet. Our economies are in flux at best. It's a time when a person who is thinking about themselves, thinking about their environment, can get extremely confused. If I have a conversation with somebody about anything, just generally, let's say I have 5 conversations, I can tell you that on an average, I would say the first person, I agree 50%, disagree 50%. Second person, I like 6 things they said, 3 things I don't like, few things I agree with. That's the general average. But nowadays, if you support a certain political system, then everything the other one does is wrong, is just bad. There is no balance which says, hey, so and so might be right about 1, 2, 3. Though I am with this ideology, I still think all that works. That seems to be missing nowadays. Going back to what you said about listening, we don't seem to listen much. So, for a person like you or someone else who's made their lives, you've gone through the tempering process, you've been put into fire and ice a million times over. How does a young person today make sense of this absolute chaos we live in? And what would be your input to somebody on how do you navigate this confusion?
Well, you take a look at both sides and see what positions they take on an issue and how does that align with your values. For example, transsexuals in women's sports. I mean, you don't see transsexuals succeeding women transitioning to men and doing well in men's sports. But there's certain a biological truth that biological men transition to women seem to be can be dominant in a particular sport. A lot of track events, power events, but and so the youth are directly involved, and then you have to say, all right, which position do you want to take, and what aligns with your values, and maybe that's how you make sense of it. Saying what values did I attain on my own? What did I inherit from my parents? What sense of fairness did I get from my teachers, my family?
That's fair. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's something I find quite common nowadays. Younger generations, I would say, have difficulty navigating the current situation because the amount of information we are all bombarded by today, there's never been anything like it. No generation previous to this has seen information come in from so many different directions and um, so heavily polarized. So it's a big issue nowadays. Wow. Here's another thought. Some of the things I look out for, the mines that you don't step on in life, would be offers that are too good to be true, whether it's investments or anything. When someone gives you an offer that's really too good to be true, you should pause and really look at it carefully. Bad friends, people who you thought were friends, and uh, like you said, maybe their values change, or maybe they've changed, maybe situations change. There are many other such minefields that are mines that one can step on in the journey of life. Another one would be ignoring your health or doing something that's damaging to your health. So, what are the minefields you would advise the youth to look out for? The mines, sorry, I keep saying minefields.
I think a lot of the school program has been politicized. And I think you've got to listen to what you're being taught, but also do your own research to make sure that what is being taught is true.
Mm-hmm. You have to seek the truth.
So, for example, I know it's a controversial subject because people have been fired for saying the mass graves of the that were from the Aboriginal or the Aboriginal children that went to the residential schools.
Yeah.
And, quietly the federal government stopped funding research into the mass graves quite recently. And it wasn't really well reported. But there are books being published and saying this was, this was a red herring, a political red herring. And I would, say, even though your school may say, these atrocities happen, there are conflicting literature out there. Seek it and make your own decision. And if you want to, do your own research and say, all right, where were these things and what did they find? So, um, for young people today, yeah, just don't accept everything as what your professor says or what your teacher says is true. I look at the protests, the pro-Hamas and pro-Palestinian protests in at the UVic, and I'm thinking at University of Victoria, and I'm thinking, oh, guys, the January 6th thing, or no, was it? I kept
7th.
pardon?
October 7th.
October 7th, the attack there, and do your own research and say, take a look at a history and say, what is going on? And should I be protesting with this group or that group? Or just stay out of it? That'll be up to the individual, but make an informed choice.
Mhm.
Wow. So how does one make that informed choice? If you're saying don't just go with what your professors or teachers are saying, what are the other bedposts you could look at? What would be a good way to make up your own mind?
Well, go to your parents, and if they're still around, your grandparents, see how they saw the world. And they've been here longer, and go speak to other people that you trust. Maybe there's a guidance counselor, or just finding an unbiased source is so tough these days. I don't know. But find somebody that you can trust to talk to. And that's a tough part, because when you're 16 and your whole world is in a bunch of 16-year-olds, it's you're not going to get, people with the experiences saying, no, this is right. Or, okay, here's some books, and here's some counter prevailing books, or, that have and read it.
Yeah.
Just find something that's, wait a second, I've got a different opinion, and listen to it and just make your judgment call, or do research to say, is this guy or this woman telling me the truth, or and do my own research. But it's not an easy solution, because you just can't watch a YouTube video and figure it out. You gotta dig deep and go to the sources that you trust, and even then do the research, do the work.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Just anything you'd like to just to have a free run on. Anything you'd like to share, anything you'd like to say.
I don't know, Vin. We've been talking for a lot longer than I thought we would, but I've covered a lot, and I've said a lot, and you've been such an appreciative audience. Thank you. And no, I just wish everyone peace and good health.
Thank you. What about you, Karen? Anything you'd like to?
I think you just add that, we talk about support and strength coming from relationships and from friends. But I think, and seeking the truth, but I think faith is a big part too. And it's not something we touched upon. And for each person, it can be different, but it still can be a guiding force. And it's often the absence of people having faith that they may lose their way. And it's a different way of looking at values. Because are we a master of our own ship, or are we guided by a divine force? And I think that's an area that's good for people to maybe seek and look at too if they're struggling.
Yes. Can you expand a little bit on the word faith?
I think it can be different to each individual, because there's many religions out there. But it's for some a belief in something stronger outside of themselves that's guiding you. And I think it's important because we talk about values we may get from our families, which are important. But I think often it's the faith that also guides people in discovering values as well.
Wow. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It's not just my family had strong values, but so did their beliefs.
That's beautiful. So you think faith would be a good pillar for a young person to?
Pardon me?
Faith would be a good pillar for a young person to use, support?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Because it's unless you find something that isn't really like a cult or something, but faith is powerful. It's everything.
Yeah. How about you, Kevin? Your views on faith?
Well, growing up, I remember we had moved into this neighborhood, and my my parents said, "We're gonna take Kevin to the United Church, a Protestant church, just down the half a block away at the end of our street." And my dad would go there, and as a bookkeeper, would be counting the donation plate and and recording it. And my mother would take my sister to the Buddhist temple in Winnipeg, and so I got exposed to not just the Christian side, but the Buddhist side as well. And I I was leaning more to the Christian side in my youth, but as I've gotten older, I've gone to the more, I see myself more Buddhist, but both are ingrained in the, do unto others, the golden rule. It's, I think, in almost every major religion has a version of that rule, saying, and I think that is the key thing. I would treat you as how I would want to be treated, no matter our political differences or our financial differences or our faith. It's uh, as long as you've got some sort of compass and some values that we share, we'll be friends.
Wow. Thank you.
I
Anything?
think too, just one last word on faith. It's again, I heard the expression and I think it very true. It's people look at it and say, well, if there is a God, how can there be so many like bad things going on in the world? And it's not if there is a God, it's the absence of God in so many for the faith that are leading to the bad things that are happening.
If I can expand upon that,
Are we one-upmanship now?
no. It's just we recently had a friend who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I know there's some rough road ahead, but when I got diagnosed with mine, I was taken back to a time where I was in the barracks in the Navy. We were ashore and we were taking some training, and a fellow, he was came back from the Padre had a church service, and he came back, and it was interesting that he, why do bad things happen? Why do bad things happen to people? And he said it's because so that you can find out how much you're loved by other people.
Oh,
So I think with our friend, I think she's found out that, Karen and I will be, we're on her team, and whatever they need support. And if she has any questions about my personal situation, my health situation, I've been available for her, and she was able to ask and get answers to questions of my experience. But, and then I would hear her circumstance and say, okay, I think you're in good shape, because the MRI was clean, and it's only this little spot, and we'll see what happens. So we're gonna as a team tackle it together. So yeah, bad things happen, and you just say, why me? Well, it's because so people can show you that you're loved.
wow. That's beautiful. I find that there is quite an overlap between Christian values and Buddhist values. Both, like you said, they talk about kindness, they talk about community, a lot of common things, but there's also differences, core differences, right? So, what was different? What is different in you today that you leaned from one to the other? I understand the overlap would be the similarities, But what is the difference that you're pulling from one to the other at this point in your life?
I guess because of the passing of my parents as well as my kid sister, it was, their faith. And I said, well, my dad going when he lost his parents, the 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 Buddhist way of dealing with it, saying, okay, when a person dies, this is what happens. And I said, well, it seems to give them peace. And knowing that, and when I lost my sister and I lost my parents, it sort of said, no, I think I know where they're going, and they'll be okay.
Wow.
And I'm sure even if I was raised in a solely Christian household, that'd be the same. A guy from the men's support group, he went to visit his grandmother who was getting on in age, and he was in his 20s. And he said, his father, who is a minister, asked his mom, are you scared? And she said, no, I know where I'm going.
Hmm.
And that seemed to provide his father with peace and provided him with peace. And in our discussion, it provided me with some peace. Just saying, okay.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I was looking forward to this conversation because in the 5 years that I've been here, I've had some fabulous experiences, maybe one or two not so pleasant experiences, but more than anything else, I've made rock solid friends. I've come across some people who are so solid, it just is inspiring. And you are one of those. And trust me, there's not many of them. There's just a few, but they're like solid. And you are one of those who I find has been balanced, sensible, as dependable as the sunrise. And I really wanted from this conversation that others would also get an exposure to your depth, to what you have to offer, to, the way we experience both of you. It's just been beautiful. So I really want to thank you. It's been fabulous. I've taken a lot of your time, but it's been beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing such deep insights. And I can see why you're so strong and so good with each other. You're
Well, thank you very much, Vin. I suspect that you are on the same path we are. And I look forward to being your friend for many years to come.
this lifetime for sure.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.